This week's DRM Not Included on F5 Live Refreshing Technology is proudly powered by Amazon Prime. We all know that you get free shipping on millions of products with Amazon Prime, but you get a whole lot more. Like free music with Amazon Prime Music, free TV, movies, and documentaries with Amazon Prime Video, free games, and a free Twitch subscription to support the content creator of your choice with Amazon Prime Gaming, plus a whole lot more. We've got links to all of these features and some of our favorites, plus a 30-day free trial, all by going to f5live.tv/prime. All right, I got a crazy story for you. Maybe a movie pitch. A movie studio has a lawsuit. They feel that people have been stealing their content, and they track them down to a particular ISP. And as part of this investigation, they ask Reddit for information on users. 10 in particular, one of which is a subscriber of that ISP. Everybody else has nothing to do with them. And so they sue Reddit to get their identities. Why? Who knows? And that's where we are right now. That's what happened. There's a movie studio, the studio behind Hellboy and The Hitman's Bodyguard, so a high-profile studio, that has an active lawsuit against RCN, which is a brand that doesn't exist anymore. It's now called Astound Broadband, possibly because of this lawsuit, dating back as far as 2016, up to and including 2020. The accusation is that RCN, I will never remember those letters in that order, did not do enough to mitigate the piracy happening on its network. Now, there are certain rules that are in place on how ISPs are supposed to respond to certain things. We know, lots of people for a while were getting, emails saying, hey, we've detected some suspicious activity on your account. If it's you, stop. If it's not, we're going to have to take action. The studio is claiming that RCN never did any of that, and they just let whatever happen. You can have a conversation about whether that's their responsibility or not, but there are some responsibilities currently in place, and so the claim is that they knowingly facilitated, because they have technology on their network to see what's happening. They knowingly facilitated the piracy of the studio's content. Now, that's the basics of it. Don't care the basics of it. Honestly, it's so unimportant to the story. All we need to know is this ISP, RCN, is being sued for facilitating piracy. The studio then contacted Reddit and said, we need the real names, addresses, and contact information for this list of users who had a conversation on Reddit about somebody receiving one of those emails from Comcast. Not from RCN. Was that the letters? Yeah. Not from RCN. From Comcast. From what I can tell, 10 users were asked for. One, openly, an RCN user, openly talked about piracy. Got it. Fine. Reddit handed over information as part of a discovery subpoena. The other 9, however, 4 of the 9, I think, 5 of the 9, never mentioned an ISP, never mentioned piracy, merely responded to the thread about somebody else getting a piracy email and saying, from what we understand, from what I understand, my provider handles it this way. Who's my provider? No. Did they claim to have any information past what's in the term sheet? No. So those are crazy. A couple of them, let's see. Trying to So four, oh, there were seven. So a total of eight. Four of the seven never mentioned RCN. Uh, Two of the three remaining users did mention RCN, not in this thread. They commented in this thread and mentioned that they hated RCN's customer support. And one made reference to RCN's policies, piracy policies, having been a customer a decade ago. So Reddit said absolutely not. The Supreme Court has been very clear on the First Amendment applying to online privacy. We have no obligation to unmask these people. This is an unlawful request, and no. So, that's good to see that ISPs are still at least looking, or not ISPs, but online providers are looking at these requests, because there was a time in the past where every time somebody got a request, they just did whatever. So it's good to see that we're responding to these. But I mean, this is a ridiculous request, especially the guy who hasn't been a customer of theirs for almost a decade.
Right. So here's my question. First of all, does Reddit under any obligation to defend these users, or are they just doing it because they don't, on principle?
They have absolutely no responsibility to defend these users. It's their data. They can hand over whatever they want.
So if they wanted to, they could comply.
They could.
Is there anything what about in the terms of service? Does terms of service for Reddit say anything about not giving your information to third parties, or
possibly? Reddit.
So that might be an obligation on their part.
Could be. Reddit has been known for its protection of secrecy, privacy, not unmasking users unless absolutely necessary. For a long time.
That's a reputation that.
Yeah.
That's a reputation they should want to have. So.
Right.
I mean,
especially since it's Reddit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Reddit is in particular. That's a reputation that I think they would want to have. So good for them for defending it, because if they don't, and it got out, then it might be bad for them.
Yeah.
And not
it would likely be the end of Reddit. Need.
But a lot of companies, paying lawyers costs money.
True.
Right? So a lot of companies will take the route of least resistance, where they're not going to and comply with such a thing, because they don't want to spend the money on the lawyers.
True.
So, I mean, does Reddit have a legal obligation if the users were definitely on RCN? I don't see what their obligation would be.
So I think it is a discovery subpoena.
But they're not suing them, so why are they entitled to discovery of a third party's data?
It's exactly what happened with Valve, right? In the Epic Apple trial, and Valve basically told them to bugger off, because they claimed that it was an unlawful subpoena, and the court agreed. And that's what's happening here, right? Until a court says no, you are under a legally authorized subpoena from the court, then yeah, there's no responsibility to give over any data. And what they're saying to the court is that the plaintiffs have filed an illegal subpoena, and right now it looks like the court is going to agree.
This reminds me of this never went anywhere, but one time I did a news story on something that, which I think we've talked about, which was the time that I busted Office Depot for lying to people about whether they had computers in stock. Do you remember that?
No. Yes,
It's going back, man. It's going back.
it
But
is. Oh my god.
for our audience who've not been following my career every day for the last decade and a half, at one time, and if you have, hi mom. Anyway, the 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 uh, of many years ago,
March
more than
10th,
10 years ago.
2009.
There you go. Many years ago, I broke the biggest story of my career. It's been all downhill since then, and that was when I found out. This is related. I'm getting to it. So I found out that um, I got some sources at Office Depot who said that Office Depot was basically, well, the company claims they weren't official. This was an official policy, but I had several anonymous sources that I spoke, several sources that I spoke with and verified, who said that they were either employees or former employees who said, "Hey, Office Depot's regional managers are telling us that if somebody comes in and asks to buy a laptop, and if they don't want to buy the extended warranty, go in the back, pretend that you're looking for it, and come out and say, 'Oh, we're out of stock,' even if it's in stock, because they get in trouble if they don't sell if they sell laptops without these extended warranty things or whatever, what they call attachments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you didn't meet your quota for attachments as either a store or an individual salesperson, you were in trouble apparently. So I did a story about it. Uh, I did a story about it like a few days later. I think it was CBS, local TV station in Los Angeles, did their own story about it, and the TV station was able to do something that I couldn't do, and they did quite successfully, which was they sent a hidden camera into a local Office Depot out there in California, and into the store. They had one person come and say, ask for a laptop, and then say, I don't, uh, and then say, like, I don't want the extended warranty. And they were told it was out of stock. And then, like, 5 minutes later, they sent another person in, asked for the laptop, say they want the warranty, and walked out with it, and bought it, and walked out with it.
Yeah.
So they interviewed the manager of the store, uh, who kind of, whatever, denied it, or admit. I think he admitted it or something, and then he was fired by Office Depot, who claimed that it was the manager's fault and he had gone rogue,
Gone rogue.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, um, so uh, I was on some follow up thing with the TV station. He claims that he independently discovered this without reading my article first. Whatever. Anyway, so where does this come to subpoena? So a month or two later, I got a thing to the office from a lawyer for the manager of that Office Depot, who was fired and exposed in CBS's news report. Not even my
Yeah.
news report, CBS's news report.
Yeah.
And they wanted to subpoena my anonymous sources for the Office Depot story, so they could depose them,
Mm-hmm.
so for a lawsuit against Office Depot for for I don't know what you'd call unfair firing or
Yeah.
whatever. I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm actually not even sure what California law this would violate, because in New York it's an at-will state, so you could probably fire the person even for very unjustified purpose, like following your policy. But anyway, uh, I remember referring this to our publisher, and I was like, "Am I going to have to, like, are we going to fight this in court? Am I going to have to hire,
Mm.
whatever? And he's like, we'll send this to our lawyer, but they have no right to ask for our sources.
Yeah. As
And
a and lawyers are not have no right to ask a journalist for their sources. A
and mind
journalist's
you,
a journalist's notebook is completely constitutionally protected. Just a note.
but anyway, yeah. Also, like once again, we weren't a party in this lawsuit. It wasn't even my news report, right? I wasn't even the one who broke the story. That was the Los Angeles TV station.
Yeah.
So, like, I wrote a story on a similar topic, on the same
Right.
topic, and they wanted to mine me for stuff that would help their lawsuit, because it would have helped their lawsuit if they could have contacted these folks.
Because
And
they could have proven that it was happening in other stores.
yes, right.
That's
I
what they're
get
trying
it.
to do.
I
Yeah.
get I get why they want the information, but it would be bad for me because
Yeah.
I said I
Nope.
wasn't going to
Because
turn the thing over.
nobody would ever
Right.
talk to you off the record again.
Right, exactly. So, fortunately, we didn't have to go any further with that. I could see a company being I could see a company, if I worked for a company that was going to be cheap about it, being like, well, why don't you just give them the names? Because who cares? It's not
Yeah.
my problem. But it is a problem.
Right.
So,
Because it damages in that particular case, it damages your reputation. You'd never have another anonymous source on anything.
Right, it would damage my reputation. So
Right.
I was when I got that, I was very concerned. So anyway, I don't know whatever happened with this lawsuit, by the way, but I assume since it's been 14 years that it's probably over now. But
14 years this week. We're having fun going back to stories that all
To
happened
previous
this
stuff.
week.
But yeah, I mean, like Reddit, Reddit is doing the right thing. They should do this. I'm glad they're not cheaping out by refusing to. I mean, granted, I don't know how much they have to pay a lawyer. Maybe they have lawyers on staff who would just write a note and say they're not going to do it because, I mean, they don't have. I mean,
they might also just have form letters that say no, thank you, go
right,
away.
I mean, they might, as long as they don't have to respond in court. If they have to respond in court, then that costs money. They have to pay for those hours, but they got to do it. I mean,
they are
business is at stake.
They are in court right now. They had to file a motion with the court to say that this was an unlawful subpoena. 5th district in California, I think. I don't remember. Information's a little old in my head, but I think it was the 5th District Court of California that they have filed this motion in to squash the subpoena. So I mean they are challenging it in court right now. So they're taking on the expense. They're not cheaping out. They are taking this seriously, and I think that's a good thing for any service provider, for their reputation, but particularly for a place like Reddit where interesting conversations happened because people can be anonymous. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens next on this. We are not going to stop following this because this one is absolutely fascinating. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of F5 Live Refreshing Technology. If you did, please subscribe to the channel down below, and of course hit the notification bell because we know that subscriptions don't mean much on YouTube anymore. If you've got topics that you'd like us to talk about in the future, please comment them down below. And if you'd like to not follow us on YouTube, there's lots of ways that you can follow along with our content by going to PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows and all of the ways that you can watch, listen, and follow along.